All right. Hi, everybody. It's me, Dr. Amanda Kemp, and I am live. I'm a little late, so I hope you guys will forgive me. I was just coming out of a meeting about implicit racial bias, so it is what it is. So today is day 5 of our 5-day challenge, where we are talking about stopping the hurt, stopping implicit racial bias, and I really just want to take some time to talk about what recently happened in terms of canvassing while black. So the first thing I want to say is, of course, thank you for all the folks who have been sending love, and to all my prayer warriors out there who have been praying. I appreciate you. Hey, Polly. I appreciate you for praying for me. I appreciate you for praying for us in Lancaster. I appreciate those of you who've been praying for Duffy and the Duffy in all of us. And here's what I want to say to you. And I've gotten emails from folks, and here's what I want to, and I've seen posts. And I just think it's important for us to remember that the way that this woman reacted, maybe that was a little extreme, but her instincts, hey Amy, her instincts were not unique. That is to say, the instinctive reaction that she had about us not belonging, about the need to call the police, about where she had this well of hostility. I think that there is that instinctive thing is implicit racial bias. And what I want us to do, those of us who are standing in the uncommon space of justice and compassion, what I really want us to do is to take a look at our own selves and to start sharing about our own implicit racial bias. So it's not so much about a bad apple, one person who, we need to collectively shame, or, get fired from her job, or whatever it might be. But instead, I want us to think about it as something that is in the water, something that is watering all of us. And this example, that experience that I had of canvassing, was just like proof that the water is having impact. And I think an important way to have an impact is to, especially if you're European American, is to own and publicly share a story of your own implicit bias, so that it's not a question of a whole bunch of people saying, oh yes, Duffy was racist, and a whole bunch of people saying, no, Duffy wasn't racist, she's just mean. Instead, what if those of you who can see the implicit bias and the racism in the situation, what if you could own it? What if you could talk about it in a way that wasn't hugely filled with shame and guilt and like that, but more like, hey, I've been raised in this culture, and so I've had these automatic reactions, and here's what I'm doing about it. And the reason why I say this is because, as you guys know, I hope you know, my theory of change isn't that you change yourself, or you build a movement in a community through shaming part of yourself, but you build change through owning all of yourself, and loving yourself, and being willing to notice and love the part of yourself that is that has been affected by this country's endemic anti-blackness and endemic centering and making superior whiteness. So this is my request. if you can claim and own your own implicit racial bias in some public way with a person, a human being, face to face or voice to voice, you will start to help to normalize the conversation. So when something like this happens, then I'm not entertaining the press who's like saying, okay, prove it to us, Amanda, because their definition of racism is someone having a explicit, malicious, verbalized racial animus. Now, my husband, I had to pause when I said that, because my husband would be like, oh my God, baby, what are all these big words, you know? And sometimes I tease him and I say, honey, you know, I just can't help it. I have a fucking PhD. Excuse me. You know, you know what I'm saying? I just have the language I have, and you have the language you have. So I'm not trying to, so anyway, that's just to say, you know, okay, get back on track. So today's task was to talk with someone about your own implicit bias, or to talk with someone about racism as a system, rather than as an immoral individual act or attitude. And I made this the assignment for day 5 because I wanted you to spend the time looking through your own stuff, and therefore having a story to share with someone else. So, hey, Shay, good to see you. So, I always feel like it's important for me to walk whatever I'm talking. So in this moment, I'm thinking about my own implicit, you know, racial bias. That is the bias that unconsciously is operating over here in me, and toward my own group, my own racial group, or other racial groups. So one of the things that's operating in me right now, I'll tell you, is I'm afraid. You know, I'm going to go canvassing again tomorrow, and I want you to know that I'm afraid. I'm afraid to go canvassing in a predominantly white, you know, upper middle class neighborhood. I'm afraid. And it's not, and I have to tell you that it's not that I'm only afraid. I just became afraid, and I wasn't afraid before my incident with this woman. But now that I've had that incident, now I'm like, I know what it feels. My nervous system is going, we don't want to feel that way again, you know? So, and I also know that experience with her was one experience that I've never had before, and I've canvassed many years. So I'm not going to let that one experience become the final experience for me. You know, I'm not going to let that one experience get generalized. But nonetheless, oh, Shay, thank you for that. But nonetheless, I do need to deal with, and this is what I'm going to say to everybody on this session with me right now, and especially people of color, women of color, who from your comments I can feel your pain. And here's what I want to say to us. We have to take care of ourselves. So before I go out, I'm actually going to use this practice that I recommend to you, that you do before you start sharing your story of implicit racial bias with other people. I recommend that you hold space for transformation. This is something that I learned from Neonuspan many years ago, and what I love about it is that you know, I can do it in real time in the midst of something, or I can do it after something scary, or I can do it before something scary, and nobody has to know what I'm doing, but I do, and it affects me, and it affects my nervous system. So I have power. It gives me power. So with your permission, I'm going to walk you through it for a little bit, knowing that, and then I can add to the comments like a guided meditation, so to speak, so you can do it for a longer time on your own, 5 minutes. And this thing, I'm just going to walk us through it for just a couple minutes. So the first thing you do when you hold space for transformation is you get your feet on the ground and you find your breath. You get your feet on the ground. You feel your feet connected. You feel your butt connected. Whatever it is that's touching the ground or the floor, is you notice it. And then you take a breath. And then you notice what it feels like to breathe. You pay attention to the breath coming in your nose, working its way down your trachea and all the way to your belly or your chest, and then you pay attention as it's going back up and out through your nose. So let's just do that a couple of times. And then after you've done that a couple times, I recommend that you imagine or pretend that you can breathe in from the soles of your feet all the way into the center of your chest, into your heart center. And as you inhale into your heart center, and as you exhale, you imagine that the air is going back down through your legs into the ground, letting it go. And then when it feels right, you just say something very simple to yourself, like, I am unconditional love. I am unconditional acceptance. And you notice if that opens you up a little bit. Just imagine you're saying that to yourself. That you're willing to be that for yourself. You might also try this phrase. I belong. I belong here. Just say that phrase to yourself silently. Not forcing anything. Just letting it ripple inside you. And then you just wiggle your toes and your fingers and open your eyes and come into this space. So, generally speaking, you could take a little more time with that, take a little less time with that, whatever works for you. But I recommend that you, prior to any difficult conversation, that you do that just to get your nervous system prepared. And I'm going to look at, so this is also an opportunity for you to share or you to ask questions if you've been doing this 5-day challenge to stop the hurt, or if you've been following along with Canvassing While Black. I welcome what you have to say. So I'm just going to scroll and look at some of the things. It seems like, well, thank you, Amy, for sharing with your niece about what you're learning about yourself. And I'm glad holding space was helpful for you. That's awesome. One of the things I know is that when you get practice, when you get to be in a safe space, like Amy was in a special retreat with us on having difficult conversations about racism. We spent 2.5 days practicing different kinds of conversations about racism. It just builds up your capacity. So I'm glad to hear that, Amy, that you got to do that. And I encourage everyone else out there to say something to somebody today. Okay, so there's something else I wanted to share with you. We're at day 5. This is the final day of our challenge. But of course, this path continues to go on. This cultivation of racial justice continues to go on. And in that spirit, I have a special gift of, I'm making space in my schedule for up to 5 people to have a private one-on-one conversation with me about wherever it is that you're feeling challenged or stuck or afraid to have a difficult conversation. I'm opening up space in my schedule. So I invite you to, apply for one of those spots, and I will do my best to, and I will respond, But like I said, I'm limiting it because obviously I can't do something with everybody, and the elections are coming up, and I'm out there volunteering, and I also want to do this in our community. I really don't want you to be sitting with a lot of anxiety and fear because of what's happening in the world today, with the bombing of the synagogue and, just the various assaults on people of color and, all kinds of stuff that's going on. I don't want you to sit with that by yourself and sort of drown in anxiety. I really, really don't want that to be what my story elicits in you. I want you to hold space for transformation. I want you to reach out, and I want you to make art about it or just to write about it. And if it's something that you want to do, I want you to apply to have a one-on-one session with me. Let me just tell you about, when I make a gift like this, who it's for. So it's for somebody who has a deep calling for racial justice. You're like, you go to bed thinking about it, or you wake up thinking about it, or, you just find yourself always, challenging the status quo or wanting to challenge the status quo. People are looking to you for leadership, or you want to, have a stronger voice, but it's there for you, like in your heart and your spirit, you got this thing. I want to make this gift available to you. And if you're willing to take some time to learn something new, to apply something new, I want to make this available to you. Those are the main things. So if you would like to, have some time with me, please, I'll put something in the comments. So unfortunately, as you can see, I'm in a car, so I'm not exactly, all set up for this session, but I wanted to come on because I promised you that I would be here today. So let me wrap up by saying, this will be the last thing that I say, and then if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to stay on and take your questions. But let me wrap up by saying, there are 5 steps, that I've noticed that have worked for me when I'm having a difficult conversation about racism, and that people have told me has been helpful for them. So the first step is to check in with your deep self. And by that check-in, I mean check in to see how present you can be. Secondly, that check-in should be on what is my intention for this conversation. Know what it is that you want. Because if you don't know what's guiding you, then you may be, speaking out of a hurt or a wound or something else that if you were conscious of, you would say, okay, let me not have this conversation now because I've got to take care of this piece of myself. So really, that first step is always to check in with yourself. And then the second step is to hold space for transformation. hold space for transformation. Please do not skip that step. Really get your nervous system together, get your connection to spirit, your ancestors together. That's what holding space is all about. And then number 3, I actually like to have the person who I'm having a conversation with actually tell me what's happening for them. So like, why is it important to them, or, make sure I'm understanding like why they're feeling this way, or what is the feeling that's happening. Somehow, I just want to get them to do some of the work of articulating what it is that we're talking about. And then after I feel like I've really got it, and then I ask them, so would you like to hear what it's like for me? And if they say yes, I share. And if they say no, I don't share, because, my experience is priceless, and I don't want to spread my pearls where they're not wanted. And then finally, the 5th step is to reflect on yourself, to reflect on the experience, and to give yourself what you need. Do you need a bath? Do you need a hot chocolate? Do you need to forgive yourself? Do you need to acknowledge yourself for being out there? What do you need? And really pay attention to yourself. One of the reasons why I feel like we have so much rampant violence, cruelty in our culture is that we have a whole bunch of us who are out of touch with what we need and who aren't getting what we need. And so then we're kind of just coming out of our hurts and our wounds and our lack of care. So I'm all about empowering us to care for ourselves and to know what we need, so we can tell the people around us who love us and care for us, so we can get it, so we can come from a place of a full cup, or a space of feeling loved and tended to. So those are the 5 steps that I work with when I'm having a difficult conversation, and that helps me. So so good to be with you guys today. I really, please do stay in touch. Stay in touch with yourself, stay in touch with me. Please stay with me. Keep holding the space, the uncommon space of justice and compassion. A long time ago, when I launched Tribe of the Heart as an idea, I said this is for people who are willing to hold the ground of justice and compassion. And when we see so much injustice around us, it is easy to lose our compassion. But I want you to know, for those of us who can see the long term, we know that we cannot build the new society we want to have. We can't have the beautiful family we want. We can't have the beautiful, neighborhood we want if we don't have both. So I ask you to hold that ground with me. Hold that ground with me. All right. Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love.